Hi, hello, good morning and welcome to Spardha Lines Daily News Analysis for the KAS examination. Today we picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express and Deccan Herald newspapers. These are very significant from your KAS examination point of view, both from your pre as well as from your mains examination perspective. Before we start with our today's analysis, we have two important gentle reminders. The first is in reference to the KAS Prelims comes mains classes. These classes will be conducted on online as well as on the offline pattern, and these classes will be conducted by experts who are highly qualified. They have rich experience. They would understand what are the trends of the KPSC and ultimately would deliver lectures on the basis of the KPSC trends. Then this will include free fortnight current affairs magazine, mains test series conducted fortnightly, special classes for communication and answer writing skills, one-on-one feedback and mentorship sessions, daily current affairs tests as well as classes. What you will also get is a statewide monthly current affairs test, DSCRT and NCRT foundation classes along with the materials that are crafted by the experts. So what is that you have to do? Join the classes immediately so that you would be able to clear the KAS examination. That apart, what we also have is the NCRT foundation course both for the IAS as well as the KAS examination. The course features include DSCRT and NCRT foundation classes with study material, classes by subject experts and highly qualified faculty, live online and offline classes, recorded classes are available. Then we will also have is the current affairs magazine, which is available in English for those who pick up English classes, and for those who pick up in Kannada, what we have is the Kannada magazine as well. So what are you waiting for? Hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it with your fellow aspirants, and also join and register for the Spardha IAS classes as well. Let's get started and look into the first article for the day. The first article says Lokayukta police registered DA case against DKS. Let us try and understand what is this article in greater detail. We have the Central Bureau of Investigation. The Central Bureau of Investigation happens to be one of the bodies which comes under the law books of the central government, which basically means when you consider the law and order is in the state list. So who will take care of the law and order operations? It is under the state list in the 7th schedule. So it is primarily the one which is taken care by the state government. But what happens with respect to the Central Bureau of Investigation? With the Central Bureau of Investigation, there are two kinds of consent. What is consent? Consent is the permission to take care of a particular case, which basically means that if there is a case that is being investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation, will it be investigated by that organization at the state level? Generally, it is the police officers who have to investigate it. But what if there is a case which has a lot of complexity in it? In that particular case, you will have is the Central Bureau of Investigation, which is step into the shoes of investigation, and such a consent should also be given by the state governments. Why? That is because the Central Bureau of Investigation happens to be a central body. It is not a state body. So only if the permission is given by the state government, that is when it will be able to see and investigate what has happened in that case. When it comes to the Central Bureau of Investigation, there are three divisions that it has. One is what is called as the Anti-Corruption Division. What is this Anti-Corruption Division? This probes the cases of corruption against the public servants. So the public servants, in case they are involved in any kind of, let's say for example corruption, they have sought for some kind of bribe, a quid pro quo, which basically means if I have to sign this, if I have to give you a clean sheet, then you have to give me some amount, you have to bribe me. So it can be in kind, where they may ask for an iPhone, they might ask for a watch, they might ask for expensive things. So it can be of kind, or it can also be in cash. So if at all there is a person who is involved in corruption related issues, then the Anti-Corruption Division of the Central Bureau of Investigation will probe and investigate about the corruption charges. Then what we have is the Economic Offences Division. This probes crimes of financial malfeasance, bank frauds, money laundering, black money operations and the like. However, the CBI usually transfers cases of money laundering to the Enforcement Directorate. So what does the CBI do? In case there is a bank fraud, for example, we have seen ICICI, some banks have issues with ICICI, there are frauds that are involved, that so and so money was given to so and so person primarily because of the connections that they have had, or because of the malfeasance, financial malfeasance that has taken place, black money operations. In all these cases, what we have is the Economic Offences Division, which immediately steps into the picture. But whenever it is more to do with money laundering, such a case can also be transferred to the Enforcement Directorate, because we have the PMLA. Under the PMLA, we have is the Enforcement Directorate, which will look into the money laundering issues. So if at all it is money laundering, this case can also be transferred to the Enforcement Directorate. Then we have a Special Crimes Division to investigate cases of violence such as murder, crimes related to internal security such as espionage, narcotics and banned substances, and cheating. So if at all there is a murder, for example, what we have is one of the celebrities who had murder, Sushant Singh Rajput. So there were many people who are also seeking that it is a Central Bureau of Investigation which has to investigate whether there is a larger nexus that is involved as well. So it is a Special Crimes Division that look into if at all there is a murder. But what happens in all these cases? The state government basically has the power of law and order. If at all a case has to be investigated, there are two kinds of consent that the state government will have to give. What are the two kinds of consent? One is what is called as the general consent. The other is what is called as the specific consent. Since it is law and order is under the state list, the states will have to give permission to the Central Bureau of Investigation. Why should it give permission? That is because the Central Bureau of Investigation happens to be a central body and not a state body. So what happens in this case? We have something called as the general consent. What is this general consent? Let's say for example, there is the state. What does the state do? The state gives permission for all kinds of cases. So it means that when permission is given to the Central Bureau of Investigation, the Central Bureau of Investigation need not have to ask permission of the state governments every now and then. Once and for all, permissions would be given, and ultimately the state governments would have given permission to the Central Bureau of Investigation. The Central Bureau of Investigation will come to the state of Karnataka, will come to the state of Maharashtra, will come to the state of Goa. They will investigate cases with respect to the corruption. So in the specific instance, what had happened? The state government of Karnataka had given consent for investigation on the corruption related cases on the public servants with respect to the Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivakumar. So consent was previously given, general consent was previously given. So all investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation. Now they have withdrawn this consent. So now the question is, when you have already given the consent, the CBI has taken over the case, it has started the investigation. Can you withdraw the consent when the investigation is ongoing? So the Supreme Court has clarified that yes, the state governments have the power to withdraw the consent. So whenever it is withdrawing the consent, it is for the next subsequent cases, not for the one which is already being investigated, which means in one of the cases the CBI has been given the permission. It is investigating a case with respect to the corruption or financial malfeasance or with respect to the murder. So it has already started the investigation. Now, can the state government withdraw the consent for this specific case? No. It basically means for the case that is already being investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation, the state withdraw the consent. They can withdraw the consent for the future cases, which means the CBI has to ask the permission of the state governments if at all any new case it has to investigate. But for the existing cases, even if the consent is withdrawn, the CBI will continue to investigate that particular case. So the Supreme Court in Kazi Lendab Dorji was a Central Bureau of Investigation 1994 has said withdrawal of consent for investigation by the CBI would not apply to cases wherein investigation was pending. So when the investigation is already ongoing, in that case, even if you withdraw the consent, it would not matter at all. So an order revoking an order giving consent under section of the Act, Delhi Special Police Establishment can only have prospective operation. It is only for the future cases. It is not for the existing one. It does not have a retrospective effect, which means for the cases that are already being investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation, the law is, the Supreme Court precedent says, the same case will be investigated by the CBI, but if at all there is a new case, in that case they may seek for the permission from the state governments. So for the existing case, it will continue to investigate. State governments cannot withdraw the consent all of a sudden, and it would not affect matters in which action has been initiated prior to the issuance of the order of revocation. So in general consent, when it is given, it is for all kinds of cases. It is not a specific one, but if it is specific consent that is given in that particular case, it is only for a specific case. It is only for that specific case. It is only for that particular case that the CBI would be investigating. So general basically means all kinds of cases, that is, it includes corruption, malfeasance, and also murder, so on and so forth. All kinds of cases can be investigated. Specific consent basically means it is for a particular consent. It is for a specific case. For the rest of the cases, you don't have to get the permission, which means it is given permission, the state has given permission only for a specific particular case. For the rest, it has not issued. So what is the crux of it? The crux of it is that the state of Karnataka has withdrawn the consent that is given to the CBI. So the past precedents are very clear that if at all you are withdrawing the consent for the subsequent operations, for the future prospective ones, you would be able to do so. But for the existing one, you would not be able to withdraw the consent, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article says, Centre rules out MSP law, offers talks with the farmers. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. This article is primarily speaking about protests that have been undertaken by the farmers in the national capital region, where they have started this protest called as the Delhi Chalo. Previously, in the year 2021-20, we also had farmer protests as well. So the first farmer protest that happened in 2020-21, we call it 1.0, and this protest that is taking place right now with the Delhi Chalo program is what is called as 2.0. So what are the differences between 1.0 and 2.0? We will look into it, and what is that the farmers are seeking for in the present situation. We will take a keen look into it, and we will also have a brief discussion about why there are farmers protests that are taking place in France as well as other European countries as well. Let us understand what these issues are in greater detail. When you go back to the year 2020, we also had farmers protesting against the central government for the introduction of 3 bills. So the central government had introduced 3 bills in order to revamp the entire agricultural sector. So what did the farmers do? The farmers were not happy with such a proposal made by the central government, and as a result, they protested against the moves of the central government to introduce such a bill, and ultimately the farmers started protesting against it. The central government had to withdraw it as well. In 2020, farmers protested against 3 laws at Delhi borders, leading to their repeal in 2021. These laws were the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act, the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement of Price Assurance and Farmers Services Act, and the Essential Commodities Act. So these were the laws and the bills that were introduced by the central government back in 2020. Farmers were not happy with it. They felt that they would have a suffocating environment, an environment where toxic laws have been introduced by the central government, primarily because this is according to the farmers, mind you. So the farmers felt that if at all it is introduced, it will be against their progress, it will be against their empowerment, and ultimately they protested against the central government laws back then, and the central government had to remove it. And during that particular period of time, when the central government had to pull off or remove these laws, the farmer community also had a proposal. The proposal was basically to ensure that we have what is called as the minimum support price and a law for it. As of now, when you consider the minimum support price, it is an executive decision. Is there a law for it? No, we do not have a law. As of now, it is an executive decision that is being taken. The central government, on the recommendation of a committee, will decide on this MSP, which is given for more than 20 crops, and ultimately it is not a law, it is an executive decision. So at that particular moment, while the central government withdrew 3 laws, it had also promised that it may try and come up with a law, or it will appoint a committee to look into the minimum support price. So what did the central government promise? The central government promised that it will basically appoint a panel of growers and government officials to find ways to ensure support prices for all produce. And at the same time, what did the farmers feel? The farmers basically felt that the input cost for a growing of a crop has increased over a period of time. So the minimum support price that is being given by the government to the farmers is dropping as well, and at the same time, the whatever products, whatever amount that is being given by the government to the farming community is not commensurate to the prices input cost. They are not able to make the profit. And at the same time, the central government had also promised that they would double the income of the farmers over number of years. So the central government has to keenly look into that aspect as well. So there are 3 fundamental things that they had to look into once they repealed these laws. One is that they said that they will appoint a panel of growers and government officials. Second, they promised to double the income of the farmers. And third, the farmers also felt that input costs are increasing. MSP is not matching the input cost. They are not able to generate the profits. And as a result, what you have is the government which said that they would be appointing the committee to look into all these issues. But right now, the farming community feels that the government made a promise in 2020-21 that they will execute all of these. But right now, the government is going very slow on the minimum support price. It is not taking any of these measures, and as a result, they are protesting against the government. The government had promised that they will execute so and so tasks, that they will execute and come up with a law for the minimum support price. But nothing of that sort has worked till date. There isn't a law in the first place, and as a result, what they are actually seeking is for appointment of this committee, ensure that there is a law for the MSP, and subsequently other proposals have been made by the farming community, and which is why we have this protest called as Delhi Chalo 2.0. So what is that the farming community is seeking? Full debt waiver for the farmers as well as laborers, implementation of Land Acquisition Act of 2013 with provisions for written consent from farmers before acquisition, and compensation at 4 times the collector rate. What is it? We have the 2013 Act of Land Acquisition. What is land acquisition? Let's say, for example, we have the principle of eminent domain. What is this principle of eminent domain? This principle of eminent domain basically says that if at all a land has to be acquired for the public purpose, in that particular case, they have to compensate the farmers or the landowners, whosoever that is. So if at all a piece of property of a farmer is being taken for the public purpose, let's say, for example, there is a defense infrastructure that is being developed, or for example railway infrastructure that is being developed, or hospitals are being developed, in that case the land of the farmer would be acquired by the government. So whenever there is land acquisition, a compensation has to be paid. So this compensation will have to be paid at 4 times the collector rate is another proposal that is being made by the farming community. Then there is punishment for the perpetrators of October 2021 Lakhimpur Kheri killings. So there was Lakhimpur Kheri killings that took place in 2021. Penal provisions will have to be enforced on them is another proposal that is being made by the farming community. India should withdraw from the World Trade Organization and freeze all free trade agreements. Pension should be given for the farmers as well as farm laborers. Compensation for farmers who died during the Delhi protest, including a job for 1 family member. Electricity Amendment Bill 2020 should be scrapped. 200 instead of 100 days of employment under the Manrega scheme. Strict penalties and fines on companies producing fake seeds, pesticides and fertilizers. National Commission for Spices such as chili as well as turmeric. Ensure rights of indigenous people over water, forest as well as land. These are some of the rights that the farming community is seeking for, asking for, and they are requesting the central government to come up and execute all of these. That is why you have the farming community which is heading towards Delhi, and they want these proposals to be accepted by the government and ultimately be implemented. So the farming community is seeking for such a proposal to be implemented by the government of India. That apart, when you consider 2.0 that is happening in the right now, what is the difference between the first protest and the second protest? In 2020, the farmers protested against 3 farm laws which were repealed by the central government after 1 year in 2021. Now the Delhi Chalo protest is being staged to demand a legal guarantee to the MSP for all crops, full debt waiver for farmers, pension for farmers, the implementation of Swaminathan Commission formula, and withdrawal of cases against farmers. So all that they had asked in 2020, they're re-asking it along with a legal guarantee for the MSP. So we do not have a legal guarantee, which do not have a statute, we do not have a law to provide minimum support price for the farming community. All that they are asking is that this law has to be created. As of now, it is through the executive resolution. The government decides on the basis of a recommendation given by a committee. So all that they want is a law in the form of a statute, in the form of a statutory provision, so that this can be envisaged. The 2020 protest was led by Bharatiya Kisan Union and Samyukta Kisan Morcha, while the Delhi Chalo protest is being spearheaded by different unions because the landscape of farmer union has changed over the years. This time, the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, which happens to be a non-political force, and the Kisan Mazdoor Morcha have announced farmers protest 2.0. Then we have Rakesh Nikait and Gurnam Singh, who were prominent leaders in 2020. Now, Jagjit Singh Dalelwal, leader of SKM, non-political, and Sarwan Singh are heading the protest against the central government. Last time, the government of India accepted the farmers' demand to withdraw all cases against the protesters registered during 2020 agitation. However, there was no legal guarantee for MST. This time, the centre has already started negotiation process even before the Delhi Chalo commencement. And finally, farmers were allowed to enter national capital in 2020, but this time around, the administration has implemented strict preventive measures as well. These are some of the major differences between the last time protest that the farmers had taken and the protest that farmers are taking place this time. And that apart, we also know for the fact that in the France as well, what we have is the farmers protest. So farmers protests are not just restricted to India right now. Farmers are also protesting in France as well. Why are they protesting? What are they doing? Farmers are basically using their tractors for days to set up road blockades and slow traffic across France to seek better remuneration for their produce. What they are also seeking is for the better remuneration for their produce, which basically means for the crops that they are releasing into the market, they are asking for more money for it, and introduction of less red tape and protection against cheap imports. These are some of the requirements as to why farmers are protesting in France. So what has the government done? The government in France has basically executed, or it is planning to come up with reduction of the diesel prices, which be reduction of the subsidy for the diesel, which ultimately means as of now the farmers in France are getting the subsidy for the use of diesels. This will be withdrawn, the subsidy will be withdrawn. So who will have to bear the brunt of the agricultural diesel? It is the farmers. As of now, they are getting the subsidy, but then the government has said it will withdraw the subsidy that is being given. So there will be more input cost. So because of climate change, governments moved to increase taxes on the agricultural diesel, which has long benefited from government tax breaks. Now these subsidies will be removed, and which is why the farmers are protesting. The farmers resent the imports because they say they put pressure on the European prices while not meeting environmental standards imposed on EU farmers. That apart, there are imports that is happening to France from some other country. For example, because Ukraine and Russia had engaged in a war, there was a condition where the farmers of Ukraine were suffering. So there were cheap imports from Ukraine to multiple other countries. So the French farmers are resenting it because when cheap imports happen, why would someone want to buy a costly one? And because of it, they are not able to generate profit. So because of cheap imports, these farmers are not able to generate profit, and ultimately they are seeking for the repulsion, or they are seeking is for the import substitution. They denounce excessive bureaucracy, which French farmers say the government compounds by overcomplicating implementation. That apart, there is a lot of red tape that is involved, lot of bureaucratic updates that are happening. The implementation process has become far more stringent as well, and because there is bureaucracy that is involved, these farmers feel that it is suffocating them. It is in an environment where they are not able to have a free hand and they are not able to generate the profits, for which they feel that the red tape will also have to be reduced. This is in France. So such a protest is not only in France but also in couple of other countries like Belgium, then in Poland, then we also have it in Spain, then in Romania as well as in Greece. So in other countries of Europe, they also have protests against the government. One is for the cheap imports, subsidies favoring large farms in Belgium, cheap imports from Ukraine and EU regulation in Poland, and in Spain there is suffocating bureaucracy and heavy red tape. Then in Romania, expensive insurance rates, EU environmental regulations, cheap imports from Ukraine, and in Greece, demands for higher subsidies and faster compensation for crop damage and livestock lost in 2023 floods. And that is the primary reason they are all protesting against their respective governments. So we have protests that are taking place in India, and not just restricted to India, and because the farming community world over is suffering, because they feel that they are not able to generate profit, they are not able to make a living, there are protests in France and all these countries that we just discussed. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, trial run of traffic control system aided by Japanese MODERATO technology. So what is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about MODERATO technology. There can be a question asked in your preliminary examination. MODERATO technology recently seen in news is with respect to what? This is with respect to the traffic control system. So what would happen if you are traveling anywhere towards MG Road in Bengaluru or towards any of the important centers in Bengaluru right now? What you will have is a new system of traffic signaling that is put in place, and this is called as the MODERATO technology. So this is a concept that is imported from the Japanese technology. So MODERATO technology happens to be an imported concept from the Japanese. So it is a Japan technology that is introduced in Bengaluru in couple of signals. So what exactly happens? As of now, what we have is a signal system which is manual in nature with automation. What do you mean by manual and automation? So basically when you say manual, what exactly happens? You will have is a traffic cops. These traffic cops will ultimately control the signal. So there will be a timer that is set, that is for 30 seconds or for 1 minute. So even if the density is increasing, let's say for example there are about 3 lanes. For example, there are about 4 signal lanes. So what would happen? So this particular signal would be for about 30 seconds or 1 minute. So they will be allowed to go. Then it is this lane, then it is this lane, and finally the left lane. So what would happen? There is manual intervention of the police officers who basically would control the signal in that particular area, allowing the traffic and the congestion to pass in that area. But what if there is a new technology called as MODERATO? How does it work? This basically means, let's say the density of the vehicles, let's say there are about 100 vehicles here, there are about 50 vehicles here, there are about 25 vehicles here, then there are about 200 vehicles here. So the density of the vehicle is more here. So with the technology that is embedded as part of the MODERATO, it will see for the fact that there is a lot of density in this particular lane, and ultimately will allow the traffic release. So vehicles will be allowed to release as per the density. So more the vehicles, more will be the movement of that particular vehicle system, and at the same time immediately 100 is the vehicles that are present in the second lane. So this will be allowed. So what would happen in MODERATO? So there would be sensors that will be installed as part of this MODERATO technology. It will have the sensors to sense the density of the vehicles in that particular lane, and ultimately on the basis of the technology, on the basis of the sensors that have been molded, there will be traffic congestion releases that would happen. So basically MODERATO is nothing but the traffic control system. As of now, what we have is a manual automation process where you will have the police officers, the traffic police will be controlling it, and that apart what you will have is a fixed automation, which basically means 30 seconds, 1 minute, so on and so forth. Apart from this, what we will have is the density module that will be tested. So in that particular road, based on the number of vehicles that are present, on the basis of density, it will be allowed to move or allowed to be stopped as well. But in this moderator technology, they have given an additional one, that they will also be able to, traffic cops will also be able to control it. Why? Let's say for example there is an emergency, there is a fire engine that is passing through, or for example there is an ambulance that is going through, or there are police officers who are running through. In that particular case, they would still be able to control the moderato technology. They would be able to stop it manually and allow the ambulance to pass in that particular road. So what we have is an adaptive signal control technology which aims to tackle congestion problems and improve waiting time efficiency at intersections. The key components include signal arms and aspects catering to both motorists and pedestrians. Additionally, the system incorporates an automatic traffic counter classifier to measure vehicle movement along with queue length measurement at critical junctions to monitor the build-up of queues. These are some of the features of the moderato technology. So this moderato technology is to do with traffic control system. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article says, law to curb cricket betting and online gaming soon. When you consider the preliminary examination, the gambling and other similar processes are part of the state government, which basically means under the 7th schedule, gambling is present under the state list. So who would be able to make the laws? It is the state governments who would be able to make the laws. So remember, this can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. So gambling happens to be a subject matter which is present in the state list of the 7th schedule. So who can make the laws for it? It is the state governments which will be making the laws, which is why when it comes to gambling, so on and so forth, you have laws which are not uniform across the entire country. For example, when it comes to the state of Goa, the state of Goa allows gambling, it allows casinos, so on and so forth. So who regulates it? It is the state government. So gambling is allowed in one state, it may be barred in another state, primarily because these are the state specific laws. When it comes to gambling or for example any other gaming, there are two types of game. One is the game of chance, the other is the game of skill. What can be regulated? Game of chance can be regulated and game of skill should not be regulated by the state. What is this game of chance and what is this game of skill? Game of chance, for example, is something which works on the basis of luck. For example, let's say a cards game of Andar Bahar. What happens in Andar Bahar? There are two players who are involved in this particular game. All that he says is a number. So there will be exchange of cards. There will be cards that will be placed for one person and another person. So the number that the person says is, let's say for example 5. So if the 5 falls for that person, then there will be cash payment that is paid. If there is a person who's asking for another number, let's say he says that he wants number 4. So if the number 4 falls for this person, then this person will be getting the cash amount. So basically there is no skill set that is involved. Everything is on the basis of chance. Everything is on the basis of the skill. So the game of chance, the game of luck is where the state governments would be able to control it. They would be able to come up with the laws. So the state government in the present situation has said, that is the Karnataka government announced that it will come out with a new legislation to curb cricket betting and online gaming, which they presume is the game of chance. So if at all it is a game of chance, that can be controlled by the state government. But if it is a game of skill, what is a game of skill? This will require a mental application of the mind. It is not just by luck, but it is a factor that is supposed to have been involved, thought process, knowledge, and also application of mind. If it is application of mind, in that case state governments cannot come up with the law. So what we have is called as the game of chance, which is nothing the example of Andar Bahar, which can be controlled by the state government. But if it is a game of skill, in that particular case the state government should not be able to control them, because that has been the precedence of the Supreme Court of India. So as of now we have to wait and watch what will be this bill all about, but as of now you only have to understand the meaning of it. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article says the many laws of the 17th Lok Sabha. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about how the parliament has been working for for the 17th Lok Sabha? How many bills have been introduced? Have there been deliberations that have been involved? Or for example, if a bill is introduced in the parliament, is it referred to the parliamentary committee? Is there been a scrutiny by the parliamentary committee? How have been the suspensions in the parliament if people are allowed to speak in the parliament, is what this article speaks about. So this article is giving you a picture, so kindly read this article. So of all the Lok Sabha with completed terms, the 17th Lok Sabha witnessed several regrettable firsts. It was the first to not appoint a deputy speaker. So the 17th Lok Sabha has not appointed deputy speaker. It has recorded lowest number of sittings. It passed significant legislation such as criminal reforms bill with more than 70% of the opposition MPs suspended, and the Prime Minister did not answer any questions orally and only one in writing. So basically these are the ones which are relevant facts. So if at all there is a question that is asked in your mains examination, how has the Lok Sabha performed? How has the parliament performed? All that you have to do is give the data in this particular case. So the annual average of bills passed declined from 65 in 1952 to 1990 period to 48 in 1991 to 2023. So the number of bills that have been introduced has dropped considerably is the first chart. The second, the declining number of sitting days and hours in the Lok Sabha. How many hours do the MP sit in the Lok Sabha? What are the discussions that they have made? This has also reduced. For example, prior to 1990, each Lok Sabha typically convened for over 550 days on average, spanning 3,500 hours. However, post 1990, an average Lok Sabha only meets for 345 days. Again, these numbers have been dwindling as well. Parliamentary tools allows MP to ensure executive accountability, but now they are not able to ask questions. They are not given enough options to question the executive. That questioning, issuing of notices, asking questions to the executive has dropped. So the legislature is not able to question the executive. That has dropped is another parameter. There has been a substantial decline in the time spent on discussing union budget. Why? Because the ministry-wise demands and the finance bill before 1990 to a mere 35 hours. Post 1990, however, ministry-wise demands have been passed without discussion only 5 times since 1952. So there is not much discussions with the budget, is what is this article all about. So basically it is saying that when it comes to the budget discussion, when it comes to the discussion with respect to referring the matter to the parliamentary committee, nothing of that sort has been working. So kindly take a reading into it so that you have to remember these facts. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article says, clause in draft India-EFTA pact may hit drug industry. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about 3 important concepts. One is the European Free Trade Association, first one. Second is the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement. And third is what is called as the undisclosed test data. First, we will understand what is this European Free Trade Association. This happens to be a regional trade organization and free trade area consisting of 4 European states, which includes Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland. So there can be a question asked in your preliminary examination, which are the 4 countries which are part of the European Free Trade Association. So there are 4 countries which are part of European Free Trade Association. One is Iceland, second is Liechtenstein, third is Norway, fourth is Switzerland. The organization operates in parallel with the European Union, and all 4 member states participate in the European single market and are also part of Schengen area. They are not, however, party to the European Union Customs Union. And remember, from the preliminary examination point of view, it was founded by the Stockholm Convention back in the year 1960. So 2 important parameters are the countries. Second happens to be the Stockholm Convention. What are the objectives of it? Developing free trade agreements, ensuring that all these countries come together, managing the agreement on European Economic Area, and maintaining and developing the convention which regulates the economic relations. This is with respect to the European Free Trade Association. The second that the article speaks about is called as the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement. This Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement will be signed between these member countries as well as India. So what is the aim of it? It aims to enhance trade and economic cooperation between India and the EFTA member countries, fostering an environment conducive to increased investments, reduced trade barriers as well as greater market access. So once the agreement comes into picture, there will be increased investments between India and these countries. Their trade barriers will be eliminated and there will be much more market access. So they will be able to release their products into Indian market. Indian products will be allowed to enter these 4 countries markets as well. That is the intent of this agreement. Subsequently, this article makes a reference to undisclosed test data. What is this undisclosed test data? We have a concept called as data exclusivity. What is data exclusivity? It refers to a practice whereby for a fixed period of time, drug approval authorities do not allow the test data of the innovator company to be used to register equivalent generic version of that medicine. Let me explain this for you. For example, there is a drug. Let's say for example, paracetamol, Dolo 650, so on and so forth. So for a medicine, what happens? There are clinical trials that are conducted. There is a scientific rationale that is present, and there are huge number of scientists that are involved, and ultimately what does the company do? The company invests a lot of money for executing a particular data, and as and when they execute clinical trials, there will be data that will be collected and this data will be documented. So what would happen? For a drug to be released into the market, what you will have is a huge investment in the form of research and development to the scientific community, and the scientific community will execute the clinical trials. These clinical trials data will be taken up and ultimately it will be documented. So what is this data exclusivity? Data exclusivity will basically mean that this data that is collected for the clinical trials will not be released into the public. Why? If this data is released, there can be another company which will be able to understand how this particular information has been able to come to a conclusion that this particular drug is efficacious or not, if this particular drug has the efficiency or not. So this data that has the clinical trial data, the efficiency of that particular drug will not be released into the market. If at all it is released, generic versions can be released, and ultimately whosoever has invested a lot of money, that person will come under the trouble. So the originator company wants this data of reports to be protected only for a temporary period of time and want to preclude generic companies from using these reports. So basically, undisclosed data is that data where the clinical trials are conducted, the data is safeguarded, and this data would not be given to the general public or to the generic version, which basically means that the local companies would not be able to use this data, create a substitute copy of it, which means that there is data exclusivity. This data, this knowledge, this information that the original company has, it will not release into the market. So if it is not released into the market, the generic companies will not be able to come up with the generic versions of the tablets, and ultimately the countries which has not got the data, the generic companies will not be able to come up with generic drugs, and as a result, this product that is already released by the original company will be quite exorbitant. So what does this article say? This article says this undisclosed data will not be released into the market, and as a result, there is a possibility that the generic versions may not be made because they do not have the data, and ultimately the product's cost will also be increasing, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says why Venkataraman was against system of address by president and governors. So we did discuss about this article in our yesterday's CNA as well, but we have one of the documentational proofs which can be used in your answer writing. In his memoirs, My Presidential Years, published in 1994 by Indus, an imprint of so and so, the former President Venkataraman had said that this whole process of customary speech happens to be a British anachronism and is a meaningless formality. So if at all they ask you a question about these customary addresses, what is that you can say? These customary practices are not in line with the modern thinking, are not in line with the normal constitutional paradigm. Why? That is because former President Venkataraman has said that this happens to have an imprint of the British anarchism. This should not be conducted, this should not continue, is what Venkataraman had said. He had recommended more than once to Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in March 1989 and Chandrasekhar in February 1991 that the institution of address to the legislature be deleted through a constitutional amendment. So he says that this entire process of customary presentations that are given by the president and the governor should be stopped. So if at all there is a question about pros and cons, should it continue or not, make use of this statement that is being given by the former president, where he says it is more to do with British anarchism. That is what you have to remember, because for the rest of the analysis you can look into our yesterday's daily news analysis. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Indira Gandhi Nargis Dutt National Film Festival Awards renamed. So the Indira Gandhi Award for Best Debut Film of a Director and Nargis Dutt Award on National Integration, which are part of the National Film Awards, have been renamed on the recommendation of a committee for rationalization of the film awards. The cash that goes with the prizes in all categories has been increased significantly. The Dada Saheb Phalke Award winners will now get 15 lakh up from 10 lakh in a report adopted by the Information Broadcasting Ministry. The committee chairmanship of Additional Secretary has said this. So the awards will be clubbed. The committee recommended that Indira Gandhi Award for Best But Film Director be renamed as the Best Debut Film of a Director. So this is the new name. So the Indira Gandhi Award will be replaced as Best Debut Film of the Director and the award money be increased to about 3 lakh. It also said that the Nargis Dutt Award for the Best Feature Film on National Integration be clubbed with Best Film on Social Issues, Best Film on Environmental Preservation and be renamed as the Best Feature Film Promoting National Social and Environmental Values. So there will be renaming of these two awards is what is that we have to understand with this article. So in case you are liking these initiatives, please do hit on the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also share it with your fellow aspirants as well. Thank you for watching. All the best.